The Majesty's Men is a multifaceted enterprise for maximizing men and glorifying God. We wage war, together as men for men, promoting the patriarchy by equipping and encouraging Christian men to throw off indolence and passivity, embrace virtuous masculinity, take dominion and protect, provide, and preside as the adopted sons and heirs of God's kingdom we are. The Majesty's Men host the Honor God Network, an alliance of exemplary men in their ministries, projects, businesses, and churches all around the world. In this weekly show, we speak with the numerous men of the Honor God Network, along with special guests and friends of the network, all about the understanding and application of God's timeless truth to the timely topics and events of today. We seek to work out godly wisdom on mission as men in every domain of life, leading and blessing our families, churches, and societies as we go. We seek to unashamedly apply every bit of God's Word to every bit of God's world, creating culture and building Christendom so that we, or those who come after us, may see every knee bow before our King as we fill the earth with the glory of God for the good of all people. Join us in the fight and the fun.
Welcome to the Majesty's Men Show. I'm excited to be back with you guys today. I think this is episode 3 now, so we're plugging along, and I'm back with Brian Sauvé. Brian, how you doing today, man?
Doing great, Jared. How about you?
Fantastic. I mean, you guys just saw this, but I just knocked over. I'm sitting in Jordan's sewing room, and I just knocked over on the way in here about 1 million buttons. So they're staring at me in the face, and I'm going to have to clean those up here in a little bit. But other than that, I'm doing really good.
Good.
And we're also here with Beau Hutchins today. Beau, how you doing, man?
Doing excellent.
Good deal. Well, here's the deal. You're new to this show. You're going to be a co-host with us and be here every once in a while on the show, just like the other co-hosts. And so I want people to get to know you a little bit, Beau. So you're going to actually introduce what we're talking about today. But before we do that, I want people to get to know you a bit. So why don't you just go ahead and tell us about, just tell us about yourself and what you do. And I know you've got your side hustle with construction as well. And so tell us kind of just, all things about you and your family. And then why don't you just go ahead after that, I want you to introduce the Aaron Wren article and then what we're going to be talking about today, which is the importance of shared space. And so just introduce that topic and, but tell us who you are and what you're about before you do that.
You got it. All right. So my name is Beau Hutchins. I'm an associate pastor in a small town, kind of smallish town, small city in South Central Colorado called Alamosa. Associate pastor, do a lot of stuff with discipleship and assimilating new members and getting people plugged into discipleship groups and community groups and all that good stuff. So I'm a pastor, but more importantly, I'm a husband to Jenna and a father to Charles, which it is his first birthday today. So it's kind of fun. We're going to hang out a little bit later today. So got one child out of the womb and one in the womb right now, due to be born in January. So we're having a good time with that, learning the whole fatherhood thing, learning to be a better husband every day, and trying to pastor and shepherd the flock that God has allowed me to do that here in Alamosa. So yeah, do that. And I also have some stuff on the side, always kind of working on stuff on the side. I got a little bit of a background in construction, which I, really utilized during COVID, when the church was kind of really slow. So have done that in the past, and also as well, full quiver woodworking, where I kind of make some cradles. I made one for myself, not for myself, for my son. That'd be kind of a big cradle for myself, but for my son. Made also one for Jared and for a couple other friends. So yeah, that's kind of what I am about. I like to kind of do the life of the mind, and study through the scriptures and theology, but also life with the hands, through hands-on building and crafting and things like that. So that's what I'm about.
Yeah, and I'll give a plug for Full Quiver Woodworking. We did have that cradle. We got it sent to us in the biggest shipping packages I've ever seen. But that worked really, really well for us. It's just pretty cool to see what you've done. So if you guys would check that out, check out Full Quiver. It's on, you got an Instagram page, I think, don't you?
Yep, Instagram,
Yep. But, okay. So Brian's out in Ogden. I'm here in Carbondale. I almost said Colorado. You're Colorado. But we're, we talked last week or a couple of weeks ago about building institutions and wanting to, we were on with Scott talking about the importance of that. And so we talked with Brian about St. Brendan's, the school, and why he's doing that, why they're doing that as a church. And, you sent us this article, and I want you to introduce it here, Beau, and talk about this a little bit, but wanting to build something for the long haul. And to do that, it requires people invested in a place and then actually owning some space. So why don't you just set that up? Aaron Wren article, the importance of shared space. Why did that get a hold of you and why you want to talk about it, Beau?
Totally. So this is actually, if you guys listening, head over to themasculinist.com. Aaron has all the archives of his newsletters. He sends those out once a month. And this is the main article we're going to be looking at today is number 43, the importance of owned space. But it's actually kind of the second article in a little series. And basically the two articles are all about Christians going on offense. So in the first article, Masculinist number 42, why you should be on the Vance and not the retreat, he just talks about how Christians need to be involved in offense. And then the second one that we're looking at, the importance of owned space, he kind of gives some in-fleshed ideas about how to go about that. And he zooms in on Moscow, Idaho, kind of as a case study or as a model for Christians who are interested in going on the advance. And I think the thing that drew me to this is, first of all, it's practical. So actually, it's not just pie in the sky, abstract ideals. It's practical. So we have actually, he gives us some advice, some really interesting observations, because he's been there a few times. He's interacted with the culture around. Us, at least myself, I haven't been to Moscow. So it looks, pristine. It looks like a utopia. But Aaron in this article gives some practical ideas. But the first really thing that caught my attention was really one of the first opening lines. He said, right when he gets into it, he says, this month's issue is a follow-up to last month's installment about going on offense. And I mean, quite frankly, we just don't hear that in our Christian culture today, right? It's all about retreat. It's all about doom and gloom. The worse it gets out there, the better for us. So even the idea of going on offense piqued my interest. It was okay. We're here to fight. We're here to do battle. And this is a way to do that. So I guess that was one of the first things that piqued my interest. The idea of going on offense. And basically he kind of starts the article talking about the importance of own space. He quotes from this guy, Bronze Age pervert, who I'm not too familiar with. And, he gives some qualifications. He doesn't, advocate to read everything, but he does have a longer section here about the importance of owning something. The importance of having something real, having something tangible in a particular place, so that you can go on offense.
Okay, let me interrupt right there, Beau.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt right there, and let's throw that around a little bit about offense.
Totally.
I would like to hear Brian's thoughts on this as well. But honestly, that point about 3 or 4 years ago for me, so disconnected from this article, but the idea of offensive, not offensive, but being on the offense of Christianity really grabbed hold of me. It was almost like my red pill moment it was in 2018, I think. And it was at the same time that the first No Quarter November happened. Basically the last 12 years or 14 years of ministry for me had been a lot of posturing and, trying to speak clearly with the scriptures, but a lot of defense. And that's a lot of what I had caught from Reformed evangelicalism, and specifically, Baptistic evangelicalism, which is defense, 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 not take the hill, take the ground. And I think there is some eschatology that's wrapped up into that. But Brian, I'm interested to know, if you've seen that as well or experienced that, or if, clearly you guys are on the offense out there. So, was there any moments that really switched you theologically from kind of like backpedaling almost, or even just staying in one particular place, not really an offense or defense, into, okay, we're going to build something here?
Yeah. I think some of the language that was important in that transition, and it's really a lot similar to that, exactly what you described. It started to take root for me when I noticed more and more just the length of God's perspective on the mission, on what he'd given us to do, just how far out that mission was, it needed to be. Like, we're talking, it's not a mission that's easily measurable in months, right? When you talk about discipling the nations, teaching them to obey all that Christ commanded, it's something that's measurable in years is probably the shortest increment that it can be helpfully measured in. And that's like the equivalent of a second on the game clock, you could say. So that really got the ball rolling for us, just a long view. When I think it was something, I can't remember if it was Doug or if it was someone else who pointed out that symbolic numbers in scripture often mean more than the literal, equivalent. So when it says that the Lord, he's, faithful to the 1,000th generation of those who trust him and keep his commands. I think it was Doug probably pointed out, that's 40,000 years, right? By the most standard definition of a generation. And if you, pair that with the reality that for God, 1,000, that number, that big round number, it kind of means bigger. So not to press that too far, but it just got me thinking, okay, not only do we have this great mission, it's going to play out over a long period of time, but it started to change sort of our strategy to think, well, what that means is that we have to equip our soldiers, and we have to equip them over that long, with long thinking. So, okay, man, it's not about a 6-week discipleship course, even though those things are important. We need to think longer, bigger, more durable, slower, more plodding, and play a kind of offense that fits in with the scale of the game. So we're not just going from thing to thing, and the evangelistic strategy to evangelistic strategy. We're doing these kind of, where you might think, oh, maybe we'll take a town, right? That's going to take some time.
Right.
You wouldn't do that unless you were playing a long kind of offense. So that was some of the milieu, intellectual, philosophical, theological background where I was started to make some of those similar connections.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people are still there, the posture is almost, it's like defend the ground we have and then retreat when it's taken. So the expectation is at some point it is going to be taken. So defend it as long as we can for our kids and the grandkids. But then eventually it's inevitable that ground is going to be taken by somebody else. And I think the corner that so many guys need to turn, and that's what I want to really encourage guys to do, is take that corner and just, make the turn and say, no, we're not going to be defending the ground that somebody else won, and won through the blood of Christ. Jesus purchased the world, so we're going to go take it. And that posture, that mindset changes so many different things. And I think, what you're talking about with, not just decades, but, if Christ returned and he tarries for, 200 years, even 300 years, 2000 years, then there's a lot of work to be done up to that. And we want to be taking ground and using the gifts that God has given us to do it, not just the expectation of somebody else is going to pummel us and take everything that we have or that we've gained. So
I like that. That brought to mind, this might actually go back to Mars Hill in Mark Driscoll days, but the air war, ground war illustration, where a lot of evangelicalism is air war with no ground war. It's lobbing bombs over enemy territory, but there's never any, conquer, colonize, occupy, invade, own. And Canaan is our, we're the antitype of Canaan, the conquest of Canaan. And so we should be not just like, we're not just Canaan, we're more than Canaan. We're to go and advance and invade and take and own. And that means roots, that means cities, that means culture, that means art, vocation, all those things, require occupation. Like you're saying, that was really good.
Yeah. So Beau, was that for you? Like, as you're hearing us talk, like, was this article that crucial, moment for you, or was there something else that had been playing, or several factors that played into, this shift in you?
Yeah. So the article, it wasn't that, but it just kind of affirmed a lot of the stuff I'd already been thinking. For me, it was definitely wrapped up in eschatology, coming to understand the post-millennial vision, and the fact that Christ is the Lord over all, and he has claim over all, and that we should be working for all those things. So that's been ingrained in my thinking for quite a while. But this was just another thing that kind of just dovetailed into that. But also, like I said, is going to give some practical how-tos. And that's what he's talking about, right? In order for us to exert the lordship of Christ everywhere, we do need to own space, and he talks about how, some more conservative minded people have tried to make a living on platforms like YouTube, these places, these businesses and organizations, they have no control over, and these CEOs who do not care about them and want to censor them, and trying to make a living on somebody else's space, you're not going to make a whole lot of headway. And now, of course, there are YouTubers, conservative and Christian alike, and on different various platforms besides YouTube, who have made good headway. But he's just pointing out the reality that, at any moment, they could cut the cord. At any moment, they could say, you know what, you're done, and that, loses influence, that could potentially cut someone's livelihood out. So that's why he's talking about the importance of own space. If you're going to go on offense, you can't just have a good, whiteboard plan. You actually have to implement it on the field. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about here with the idea of own space. You have to own your own stuff, institutions, land, platforms, whatever the case is. Now, you might be able to make some headway, like I said, on other people's, but the goal should be ownership of space. So yeah, that's really what he gets into. And then he gets into Moscow, Idaho. Now, have you guys been to Moscow before? I've never been. Have you guys been there before and been to a conference or anything?
We've actually been there together.
That's right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Thanks
was that? Was that 2018 or was that 2019, Brian?
I think it was the 2018 missions conference there
Yeah.
in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian displayed superhuman strength on that trip or like superhuman stamina. I get to the airport, 45 minutes.
We lost your audio right when you were extolling my strength. So you
Oh man. Okay.
Repeat.
We're back at it. Hopefully we're back at it, talking about the strength of Brian. 45 minutes of sleep, and then he drives us 10 hours straight with no sleep other than that 45-minute cat nap or that 45-minute power nap, 45 minutes up to Moscow, and did not fall asleep and did not kill us. So that was the mercy of God on display.
Was.
Nice. Yeah. So like for me who haven't been to Moscow, it just seems like the promised land, right? You know, you hear about, the Logos school, you hear about the businesses, and, a few folks here in my church, we've, kind of talked longingly about Moscow. The grass is greener up there. If we just moved, everything would be okay. Of course, that's a foolish thing to think, but the thought occurred to me eventually, like, well, why don't we just build our own Moscow? Instead of moving and transporting and building and taking the roots we have here and the networks and the life lived here, instead of doing that, why don't we just build our own Moscow? And I've thought that for a while. And then this article comes along and here we are, a case study in Moscow, Idaho. So it was really good timing for me to see all that stuff come to fruition through Aaron's article.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think Moscow. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
No. You go ahead, Jared. You probably had much better insight than me.
So we get up to Moscow, and I think from afar, you're right. It's kind of a duplicitous. I mean, you look at on one side of the things in Moscow, and you see that own space. You see, a really neat brewery that's owned by people from the church. You see the old theater in town that's now converted into a location for Christ Church. You see really neat things, and that real physical owned space. But you really do see the church really is the tip of the spear that's absorbing so much in that community. And there is hostility. I mean, there's hostility in that community where it's also a highly liberal town. And there are people in that town that are not conscientious at all about what's happening at a national level, or the fact that people like us are looking to Moscow and saying, man, there's some really neat things happening there. They have no idea about the homeschool movement. They have no idea that people really want to learn and see what's happening in Moscow and other places, because for them, this is like the liberal bastion. This is the place that, they can do their gay pride parade. No, probably the only place in all of Idaho where that's welcome. I mean, that place in probably Boise. And so there is this, it's interesting. It's almost like there's a city within a city, we've heard that from be the city within the city in Babylon, build your houses and live there and be for the good of the city. And so you see that happening in Moscow, but there's definitely hostility there, I think. I mean, unless I've misread it. I mean, Brian, you've been there too, obviously. So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been up there a couple times. I've been for a few conferences. The one with you, we went up for Grace Agenda. I went to a Presbytery meeting there last year, October. And there's certainly two towns, and where it comes into the sharpest contrast was in the very public political fight over the masking mandates. For sure is where you see that. I mean, it's kind of under the surface, but as soon as Christ Church shows up in the city, the town square, singing psalms, unmasked in the midst of the most masky, totalitarian light area in the entire state of Idaho. All of a sudden you've got hordes of pink-haired feminists bashing on their drums and playing WAP, as loudly as they can, which is hilarious that's the best cultural artifact they can bring to the fight. And the Muscovites are bringing, they're bringing, "Oh, sing a new song to the Lord." It's like you brought a knife to a gunfight, but it's definitely an undercurrent. Aaron Wren brings up, there's two coffee shops, there's two sorts of businesses, and what's cool is that he says, oh yeah, Butzer's is the better coffee shop than the liberal one. And so it's visible in the structure of the commerce there. There certainly are people who aren't aware of it and are less aware of it, but they have a big enough, they've played offense enough that the residents have had to react to them. They're like, if you allow me a chess metaphor, they're playing a fried liver attack, and they've made their opponent defend and not just ignore them and continue their own development.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I've seen that, that very good description of that. So Beau, when you're thinking about shared space, okay, build your own, Moscow, Idaho, obviously that includes, all right, I've got to be out of debt. I got to be in a financial position to actually set the example here, because if I'm wanting to build this, I've got to set the example, and I've got to get people around me that's already here that also shares this vision of our community and what it could be. And if we're going to replicate something like that, then there's some real physical barriers. Like for instance, how this looks in a city and how it looks in a rural area is going to be completely different. We talked last week about how for Brian and our place, if you move, like right now, I'm looking at some property, 11 acres for $35,000. Okay. 11 acres, 35 grand. And
unbelievable.
Right. I know. And then
Yep.
there's another piece of property. It's 30 plus acres and it's for sale for $70,000. Okay. So, I mean, and this is a totally different area where you're at, Beau. It's kind of more rural, I think, as well. So, I mean,
Yep.
shared space is going to look different, or own space, excuse me, is going to look different than in urban context, and then in a rural context, it's going to be different. But practically, then just walk us through what Aaron Wren's talking about, and then how have you been thinking about it? Because if you want to build something like this, I mean, they had Doug Wilson. Beau, you're a sharp guy, but God's using you. You're not Doug Wilson.
Right.
I'm not Doug Wilson. Brian's not Doug Wilson. So how does it practically get implemented then? Like, guys are like, yeah, let's build this. I don't want to have to move somewhere. I want to build it. All right. Well, how are we going to do it?
Yeah. Well, let me talk about the article, what Aaron lays down, and let me talk about kind of some of the things that I'm doing, and then you guys can riff off that. So what's interesting, we do, when we think about Moscow, we think about Doug Wilson, but, Aaron points out the whole Wilson ministry up in Moscow was started by his father, Jim, right? So Doug's kind of just inheriting this, but it was a strategic point. Jim Wilson wrote a book about evangelism, the principles of war applied to evangelism. And he talks about this strategic point, a place that's feasible to win, but also that takes ground from the enemy. And, so that's what he talks about. You can go to New York, but that's going to be a hard place to win. But you can go to a really small town and that'd be an easy place to win, but it may not, cede ground or take ground from the enemy. So he talks about how Jim Wilson, Doug's dad, took this strategic point and intentionally chose Moscow for this reason. And he chose it because there was a college, a university. It's a university town, but there's also another university close to it. So he intentionally chose it and intentionally started this process of being around for the long haul, burning the boats, being around through thick or for thin. So that's really important. And then he just goes on to talk about how the church has been incredible institution builders. And let me say up front, I saw a Doug Wilson response to the article, and it almost sounds like, Doug Wilson's kind of the man behind the curtain, pulling all the levers, telling people, you need to start this business, you need to do this thing. But really, Wilson just kind of said in response to this article that he just kind of preached and was faithful, and then this thing just kind of grew up out of that. But Aaron Wren says, in addition to building the church, they have been incredible institution builders. Doug Wilson was the inventor or co-inventor of classical Christian education with the Logos School there. They also have a liberal arts college called New St. Andrews, a pastor's training program, a media company called Canon Press that's very plugged in. So they have their very own institutions and have a nationwide impact through them. And he talks about how the church members have real estate and scalable wealth businesses and consumer-oriented businesses. So this is not a church that is, so heavily on the spiritual, where they, prize the spiritual over the physical, but they've gone out into the community and actually have a presence. And let me just give you kind of what I thought was the best, sentence here, and then I'll give you Aaron's kind of bullet pointed things for us to think about if we want to build our own Moscow. Aaron says, so they have physical ownership of a space and economic and social ownership of their own businesses. This allows them to exert a powerful cultural presence in the town. They may be the minority, they may not be liked, but they are there, they are visible. They bring a lot of attention to Moscow of the type many locals might not prefer, and they are very difficult to get rid of or intimidate. And that's a really, really huge. So we have physical ownership, economic, social, so that they may have a cultural presence in the town. We may want to be about the culture and, confronting the culture, but we actually have to have our own culture if we're going to do that. And then Aaron basically just ends, so Moscow owns space the Moscow-owned space stack thus looks something like this. So point number one, have the community confidence to be cultural and even visibly distinct from the surrounding community. Build a cultural mass of people relative to the overall community size. Develop a method of A, attracting like-minded people, while B, filtering out differently minded people. Next, create scalable businesses that generate wealth, employ community members, and otherwise contribute to the community through taxes. Create top quality consumer oriented businesses, acquire strategic commercial and residential real estate in the historic town or neighborhood center. So there's a lot there, but I thought that those kind of two things, that statement and the bullet point, was the flesh, was the practical things about how to do these things. So you guys want to riff off that for a second, and then maybe after I can give what I'm doing, and then we can share what you guys are doing too. Any thoughts about what Aaron said there?
I highlighted that section too, where the owned space stack, that was the highlight of the article for me. And there's a lot in there. One of the things that really jumped out, though, that I think quite a few pastors miss out on, which is very important and absolutely key to what they've built up in Moscow and also other places in for example, I would go to Apologia in Arizona as a community that is doing similar things. You might look at them and say they're in the larval stage of Moscow that's 40, 50 years in. And it was the filtering out differently minded people. So they've developed a method of attracting the like-minded while filtering out the differently minded. You can't have this illusion that you will maintain the largest mass of people that you could possibly attract and have cultural potency, because you'll have to do that necessarily at the expense of specificity and cultural identity. So you always are going to be preaching people in and out of the community. As you preach doctrinal distinctives, cultural distinctives, you just have to be willing to develop a thick hide for rejection, hatred, reviling, slander in the community. You can bet that there's a whole vocal subculture in any community like this that is known, like like the meme, your personality can't just be hating Doug Wilson, but they try it anyway. If you are attempting something like that, you just have to steel yourself from the beginning. Well, you have to preach distinctively enough and lead distinctly enough that people can identify something they hate and are offended by. And you have to be ready for, rejection and hatred.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think a couple of things that you had said, tying in some comments that you made earlier, Brian, and tying it in with the Apologia comment. All of this, implementing this plan takes a long time and a commitment to decades. The life that God has given us, if God wills, we'll live 70 to 80 years, maybe longer. And I hope that I get to see a lot of years, and hope God gives me many years. I want to be able to see my kids, my grandkids, great grandkids, all of that. But one of the things that has been a staple of Moscow has been that consistency, and it's been consistency over the decades. And so if we want everything right now, I think about like the book, a lot of people want the book of Acts, especially charismatic folks. They want all of the book of Acts every single week, and they miss that the book of Acts is a 30-year book. Yeah. So if you try to get all of the book of Acts in every single service and every single gathering and every single small group, you actually end up getting something that's not very much like the book of Acts. Because it's a 30-year book, and you see this growth, and you see signs and wonders over 30 years. Same thing with what Aaron Wren is talking about, and what we've seen with the case study in Moscow is this is a commitment to the decades. And so for us, faithfulness week in and week out, and a commitment to build long, to build slow, and to be faithful. And then look around, and it sounds like the way Doug describes it is it's almost like he looked around, and it's kind of like, look what God has done here. Like, this is amazing what God is continuing to do. But it's been through decision after decision of saying, okay, we need a school, so we're going to start one. Okay, we need to be able to put out this material that we're writing, so we're going to start a publishing company. And in that moment, they probably did not imagine what Canon Press would be. They probably didn't imagine what Logos School would be, and what the Christian school movement or the classical Christian school movement would be. They didn't recognize that. It just started around a table, around a cup of coffee, around a group of guys just being faithful in that moment. And then you add decades to that of consistency, and that's what you get. And so I think that any of these plans that Aaron Wren puts down, any of the things that we go toward, we have to be consistent and trust that over the long haul, that God is going to bless this, and he may bless it in different ways than he's blessed, what's going on in Ogden or what's going on at Apologia or Christ Church or out where you're at, Beau, but being faithful, and then just kind of look around and say, okay, look what God has done.
To me, one of the keys to this kind of community also would have to be just the great success in imparting a certain culture to men and creating a certain kind of man. We talk quite a bit in our context here in Ogden that particularly Pastor Dan and I talk a lot about this, that you can't just have pastors who are doing this. You have to have men who are differently gifted, who are doing completely other things, like just entrepreneurially gifted. And you have to impart this robust, cultural, reformed Christian identity into them in such a way that they don't think, well, if I want to be a good man, I have to be a pastor. I have to aspire to ministry. But they take that and then they say, oh, I'm going to build a scalable tech business that can, employ thousands of people in Podunk, Moscow, Idaho. It's scalable, and that kind of thing. You have to have guys who go start a coffee shop. You have to have guys who are able to manage and promote and do online marketing for Canon Press, which they do a tremendous job at. So I think that's such a key, is that Doug was like a catalyst there in a lot of ways. And he is a very much a gifted leader that very few people are going to be able to match he's a 10 talent guy. But Doug doesn't do everything there. We were talking about. Doug doesn't just go do this. He doesn't deploy everybody like Hitler, like a top down, sort of power thing. No. Doug has preached and through his preaching made an army of men who get this reformed, Christian, robust, culturally assertive, joyful, happy, satirically biting Christianity. And then they go and they do that everywhere they go. It's just like, that to me is such a key to the secret sauce of Moscow, Idaho, that's easy to overlook just by looking at Doug.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've always irked against in the ministry, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, if you preach a sermon, it may be your best sermon, it may be your worst sermon, but there's probably at least one person in the congregation who comes up and says, that was a great sermon. Even if in your mind, that was terrible. That was like one of the worst sermons I've ever preached, but someone's going to say, oh, I really enjoyed that, really encouraged by that. But the men in our congregation, they don't get that type of encouragement in their day-to-day jobs. They're not the ones getting the encouragement. They're not the ones feeling, like they're contributing to the kingdom or whatever. So I think we have this view of, because the auto mechanic gets his job done and then he's just encouraged to go on to the next one. So yeah, I guess what I was saying was that sacred versus spiritual divide, trying to build up men who see that they are contributing to the kingdom, to the mission of the church that is not necessarily tied directly to pastoral ministry. So that's what I was saying, to kind of riff off Brian's comment earlier.
Yeah, that's good. And to plug Scott Tungate, Scott's got some really good things to say about this as well, where he encourages guys, where he talks about how the Levites made up a 12th, 1/12 of the people of God. And so you look at a small minority of people doing the work in the temple. And he talks about how, within the church, your best guys, you typically think, oh, great, man, get them on the elder track, get them on the deacon track. And that may actually be really miserable for them. And instead, you got to get them in a place where they're going to, as he says it, they're going to go crush, and they're going to, end up being a landlord own properties, 50 properties in the city. And they're going to love that. And they're going to steward what God has given them well, but they're not going to be in pastoral ministry. Okay. So here's a question. I get to rambling. What Beau, are you doing then? And then I'll give a couple things that we're doing here, and then we'll pass it back to Brian. And then we'll give it to you to finish things up, Beau. But what are you doing?
Yeah, so we are just kind of in the beginning stages of this. And the thing that I'm doing is focusing on men. And right now, over the summer, we are reading through a couple of men in the church, about 10 of us, 10 to 20, depending on who shows up. We are reading through C.R. Wiley's Men of the House. I think a lot of this really does come back to the idea of repentance, not necessarily repenting from sin, but changing our minds when it comes to, our responsibility and engagement in the world, what it means to be a Christian in all spheres of life. And I think that C.R. Wiley's book, for me, opened my eyes, to a lot of these things about productive property. about becoming, anti-fragile and durable. So that's one thing we're doing. I'm focusing on the men in my church, reading a practical manual on how to build a household. And then next week, we are going to start meeting about how to, start a classical Christian school. So that's what we've got going on.
Awesome.
And that's what we're going to be doing. So yeah, they're kind of just in the beginning stages, but we're starting. So.
All right. So here's something that I'm doing to encourage our guys with. And I think Man of the House is a great place. We're talking about, again, productive property. C.R. Wiley, I think, has been an influence on all three of us in a really, really good way. But I had a guy come to me. He owned a still does, a window washing business. And he was seeking counsel, new guy, had just become a Christian within the last year and just landed at our church, he and his wife. He was one of those guys where you kind of feel like you knew him forever. You meet him and you just hit it off. He's become a really good friend. And he was sitting in my office and just asking for counsel about what to do, because his window washing business, he did both commercial and residential, was in an okay spot, but he was not making the kind of money that he needed to make, and was asking if he should go work for this factory. And because of some of the principles we're talking about today, some of the principles that are in Aaron Wren's article, I was able to talk to him and say, hey, listen, JT, instead of that, you got to think with your kids and grandkids in mind, and think about the opportunities you could have for your children if you commit to this and go out and really just kill it with your window washing business. What would it look like for you to take 6 months to really just go out and build this thing up, both commercial and residential, and think about what this could mean for your son and your daughter, specifically for your son in 10 years, when you've got a route for him and he's going and taking responsibility for all the residential houses, and you're washing windows for, 50 houses. And you've got a full-time job for him to step into, and you've got a full-time job that you've got, and you're able to make these routes. And instead of going and working for somebody else, you be the man that somebody else works for. And these are just basic principles of things that we've been learning over the years, and I've been learning over the years, and helping him think with his grandchildren in mind. Well, he took that advice, and he's doing great. His business since then, he's gotten new accounts. He's built it up, and he's thinking about how, okay, this is going to work for his family. His wife is doing some of the books for him. So this is becoming a family business where, this is something they're all doing together. So not only is it going to end up being where he's not working for somebody else, but this is going to be something for his whole family to do. And what ends up happening is 20 years from now, 30 years from now, JT becomes a guy that's able to look at a young guy in our church, and he's able to fund this young guy's idea to build a business in our city, because he's really been crushing it for the last 30 years and built up this window business. And now he's a multimillionaire and can say, yeah, I can give you the first $100,000 to get this thing going. And it builds over the years and over the decades. And so really, it comes, some of this stuff comes, and I don't know how this is going to turn out. JT and Andrea may end up moving away or something like that. I have no idea. But when we're thinking through these things, you can think through how you give counsel to people, and the men in particular within your church, when they're talking about, man, I would love to build. I'd love to just be a builder. And, you say, okay, well, start doing that on the weekends. And then when you get to the point that you can't do both because you're just, burning the wick at both ends, quit your job at the bank or quit your job wherever and open your own, do that full time. And so that's one way that you can start thinking through how can this build over the decades. And again, this is just one example with one guy, but it starts with conversations with one person at a time. And then 30 years from now, by God's grace, JT's the guy that can fund this idea to start the coffee shop in our community.
Man, that's so good. It's such a good snapshot of how one conversation where a guy's humble to come talk to his pastor, what should I do? And then you not say, become an elder, or not say, hey, let me just talk about theology. You say, let's apply your theology in wisdom and practice to your life. And that could change generations of his family. Man, that's awesome. Get fired up thinking about that.
Okay. So Brian, what are you doing, man? We're on the edge of our seat wanting to know, okay, I know you're doing the school, but how are you encouraging the guys to?
Yeah. So the way I'm trying to think right now as a pastor is, to unashamedly inflame a longing for glory in my people, and particularly in the men, in the women too, a glory of their vocation. Like the glory of a thing is, glorious brightness, it's effulgence, it is it's the weighty goodness of a thing that is at peace with what it was designed to be and do. That's how I think about glory. And so a man is glorious when he's being what God made him to do. A woman is glorious when she's being and doing what she's made to do. And so from the pulpit, thinking about that, like the pulpit is the prow of the ship, Moby Dick reference, kind of that idea. My goal is to make them want proper glory, to glorify God by being what God made them to be and do, and not have disordered loves, and see how that affects everything in their life with the talents that God has given them. And so out of that, it's kind of like you preach that and then encourage the men and the women in doing what they find with their hands to do. So we've got St. George's Guild starting up, which is like a pastoral training program. We've got some business incubation going on with some of our guys. Headmaster Kevin Love is doing a lot of that with our guys. We've got the school coming up and a lot of work there. We've got a lot of small little businesses starting with some young men. We've got at least one older man in the couple actually, who are taking some younger men under their wing, hiring them. One guy's particularly has just transformed a younger man's life and helped him. So it's just kind of that. And I didn't do most of that. It's just this, here's what you are. So go and be that to the glory of God, and want to win, and want to, have the weighty goodness, the self-forgetful, humble, courageous, weighty goodness of being what you are, and not self-consciously worrying about being what you're not. So it's kind of hard it's almost hard to keep up, but at the same time, it's like, I feel most weeks like it's just normal pulling weeds, preaching the Bible, doing some counseling. And then you do start to look out and go, man, that guy's the last year, the Lord's really transformed his life. And at the same time, fighting wolves, keeping wolves out, making that differentiation, trying to be even more aggressive at the front of telling people when they come to join, like, this is what we are. Let me tell you everything that would offend you about us here in the first conversation, so that you cannot be surprised 6 months down the road when we, for example, say the word patriarchy positively, or when, something like that. So, but it's been good. God has been so good. We're thankful. And I'm encouraged to hear you guys, man. It's just so cool to see the Lord doing a lot of these similar things in so many places and men right now in churches and communities.
Amen. Hey, Beau, what do you got, man? Take us home.
Yeah, so that's the goal, right? Wouldn't it be great, instead of everyone, transplanting and moving up to Moscow, if we just, built Moscow where we were at? Mm-hmm. If we had a Moscow sanctuary type of city, Geneva type of city, in Carbondale, in Ogden, in Alamosa, in, all across this land, if it wasn't, let's look to Moscow. Let's see the faithfulness of the people. Let's see what God has done there. But let's build Moscow ourselves. Let's, start where we're at. Take the long-term view, be intentional, and do it with other brothers and sisters. I think that's kind of the main couple things that I'm getting from our conversation. So let's do it. Let's build Moscow and where we're at.
That's good. And guys, just as a surprise here, next month, Beau and Brian, myself, will be on talking with Doug about this. And so we're going to be able to have a conversation with him, just asking him about what God has done over the last 30, 40 years. Should be a lot of fun. And, he's always fun to talk with. I think we've all got a chance. I don't know if Beau has yet, but I know Brian and I have got a chance to talk with him, and he's just so much fun to learn from and to be around and just talk to. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy that conversation. That's going to be a lot of fun to have him on. And it's probably how many of you are going to get introduced to this show, is just somebody passed that show along because Doug was on there. And so be on the lookout. But guys, anything else before we jump off of here today?
It was fun.
All right. One final plug. Go buy Brian's album. Go check it out. Albums,
definitely
plural.
that.
Go get them. Go buy them right now and sign up for his Patreon. And
thank you, Jared.
You're welcome. And for everybody else, guys, thanks so much for being here and tuning in, listening in. If you would subscribe, share this, spread the word, leave a rating, iTunes rating and review, that kind of stuff. All the things that podcasters tell you to do, please do that for us. We're so thankful that you would listen, and we're excited to have you keep coming back. We're going to have a lot of great things that we're going to talk about, and so we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Thanks for joining us on the mission with the Majesty's Men. For show notes, go to themajesties.men.com/show. There you can also submit questions and suggestions for the hosts. If you're interested in joining the Honor God Network, type in hnr.gd into your browser to learn more and apply. If you appreciate our mission and content and what we're building, we'd appreciate your support. Leave us a 5-star review where you listen to podcasts so that others can find the show. Financially support our efforts and strengthen the entire network by giving a one-time gift or set up ongoing support at themajestiesmen.com/support. Be brave and share this show and other content on social media to help other men find content and community to reinforce them. Lastly, and most importantly, live what you've learned. Be good, stay dangerous, honor God in all you do. We'll see you out there, brothers.